Alright, welcome to another one of my very entertaining videos. Today is going to be focused on understanding kidney. And as requested, I thought I'd put together just this short installment of an introduction to what the kidney is, how to break it down, and then we'll go through with different videos to specifically look at key aspects of how the entire unit works. But for this overview, let's just introduce the overall function of the kidney. Broadly speaking, we can break the kidney down into two different functions. The first one is filtration, and the other is reabsorption. This, by definition, really is exactly what it sounds like. Filtration simply gets rid of stuff that I don't want, whereas reabsorption retains the stuff I do want. And all of this combines to provide a level of homeostasis in the body, specifically when we're talking about ion balance, blood pressure, and acid-base balance. There's the big picture, and I hope you can appreciate those are fairly diverse things. When we're talking about ions, we're talking about blood pressure, we're talking about acid base. There's lots of stuff going on in the kidney, and how it all functions can actually reflect the compartmentalization of the key functional unit of the kidney, and that is the nephron. So let's take a look at the nephron. Here's our nephron here. And what I'd like to do now, let's break this down into a couple of different parts. There's one, there's two, there's three, and there's four. Remember, we're going to break this down into filtration versus reabsorption. And this first one over here, this first box, this is where filtration happens. And we can break this down into a couple of different components. We have here this structure called Bowman's capsule. And this is essentially the collecting bowl of the filtrate that's going to come, of course, from the blood. So let's supply a blood supply. Blood is going to be coming in this direction, up into Bowman's capsule. Then it's actually going to leave and head out that way. We won't spend a lot of time talking about blood, but a little bit. It's kind of important. This area up here, this is called the glomerulus. And this is where filtration happens. And we'll talk a lot more about filtration and what regulates it. But filtration is essentially those things from the blood that are allowed to pass through the glomerulus and enter into Bowman's capsule, which again acts as a collecting bowl for all of this filtrate and focuses it into the nephron itself. Now that we're inside, our next stop is this green box here. This is the proximal convoluted tubule. There's a couple of things that happen here. First and foremost, most reabsorption. In other words, things that got into the filtrate that I actually don't want to lose through the bladder, through the urine, I want to get back. And so this reabsorption is essentially moving things back into the blood. We also see something called active secretion, where some items that didn't get filtered, but I really don't want, I want to get rid of, I'm going to move from the blood specifically back into, or not back into, but into the filtrate. That's active secretion. Okay, moving down to this blue box, our third box, this is the loop of Henle. A very cool structure, and this is all about the active reabsorption of both water and salt, specifically sodium chloride. Okay, and then our fourth box. We're actually going to combine two different structures here. We could go in depth and we could examine each of these structures independently, but for the purpose of this class, we're just going to combine them. Both the proximal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct. Key features here would be the fine-tuning of water reabsorption. This is where we're going to find potassium ion balance. And then lastly, pH regulation. And we're going to see a couple of different cell types. If we zoom in and take a look at what's going on, up here near the proximal convoluted tubule and also the collecting duct, these are going to take place in a cell type called the principal cell. And just a little bit further down in the collecting duct, we're going to have intercalated cells, mean alternating back and forth. This is going to be type A, and this one's going to be type B. And in these type B intercalating cells, that's where we're going to see pH regulation. So as we zoom out, we see that the kidney is involved primarily in both filtration and absorption. Filtration, getting rid of things that I don't want. Reabsorption, trying to retain the stuff that I do want. And this leads to homeostasis, not only of ions, but of blood pressure as we think about the movement of water, and also acid-base as we think about both protons and bicarb ion. The nephron is the functional unit of the kidney. There are a couple of different types that we'll talk about in future videos, but we can break it down roughly into these four different areas, where at the beginning we've got filtration with Bowman's capsule and the glomerulus. We've got the proximal convoluted tubule, where we've got water reabsorption and active secretion. We've got the loop of Henle, where we're going to get active reabsorption of water. And then lastly, the proximal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct. This is where we're going to see in the principal cell fine-tuning of water reabsorption and potassium ion balance. And then in the intercalated cells of the collecting duct, this is where we see pH regulation through type A and type B cells. And we'll go into detail in each of these areas in future videos.